They've invaded our government, Marco Rubio says, to the highest levels and the highest concentrations ever, making them an existential threat, have been for decades. That's false. By the way, if you actually study, Russian communists did invade our government to the highest levels in the 1950s and the 1940s. The government maligned the one person who actually wanted to do something about that, Joseph McCarthy. The term McCarthyism, you may not know, was a State Department created term to malign anyone who knew this, like the term conspiracy theorist was also created by the government for anyone who believed that the government had something to do with JFK. So when you use McCarthyism, you are using propaganda. I just want to tell you that. Today, we have Israeli government invasion of our own government. It's plain as day to anyone who is looking. In fact, Israeli occupation of our government now is to the point where we have coordinated our militaries with the IDF. But no, the White House says, Cuba. Here is Marco Rubio selling that fear to Fox News. Fox News all too happy to stoke it. Watch.
To the average American, you see Cuba, a small country, 90 miles off our shores, 9.5 million people population. What people forget that when it comes to things like espionage and influence operations, they actually are an influence and espionage superpower. If you look at the history of espionage in the United States, Cuba is the only country that consistently has implanted and embedded spies in our system without even paying them. We had an ambassador, a U.S. ambassador, who ended up being a Cuban spy and was recently convicted. We've had them penetrate the highest levels of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Ana Belén Montes was one of the single biggest intelligence failures on the part of the United States and one of the biggest penetrations we've ever had in our system. So, and then on the influence front, if you look all throughout Latin America, every communist left-wing insurgency that's destabilized governments across the region, every single one of them over the last 40, 50 years has found its support, its help, in many cases its birth, from a Cuban influence operation. So it was an important report just to highlight the role they play in our country, a very negative role.
Okay.
I like this comment from my tube for you too. Says Cuba is 17 hours away from having the bomb.
Most likely. Now, Politico is reporting that the U.S. is sending more intelligence assets into Cuba. According to reports, they say such intelligence moves could portend actions ranging from a U.S. military operation to stepped up efforts to turn Cuban officials or ordinary citizens against the regime.